it's time for us to move on to the lead panel discussion, the theme being Creating Indian Icons, for which we have a very power-packed and a robust panel. This panel is being moderated by Outlook business editor, Ms. N Mahalakshmi. And in what promises to be a very lively discussion, I would like to invite Mahindra & Mahindra Managing Director, Dr. Pawan Goenka, the man behind the transformation of the group's automotive and farm equipment businesses apart from going overseas. GCMMF Managing Director, Mr. R.S. Sodhi, who runs a giant of a dairy business. Cafe Coffee Day Chairman, VG Siddhartha, who made the habit of drinking coffee look cool. Co-founder Hiranandani Group, Mr. Niranjan Hiranandani, a company that is synonymous with large townships. I believe he stepped out of the room for a bit. We'd request him to join us back. And Britannia Industries Managing Director, Mr. Varun Berry, under whose leadership the company has moved from a number 2 in biscuits to a position of leadership. Ms. N Mahalakshmi, all yours.
Arundhati Bhattacharya, Chairman of SBI. Thank you all the panelists for joining me for this discussion. I really appreciate the fact that all of you have blocked half of today to do this. And so we chose this topic, creating Indian icons, because right now India is at a stage where consumer aspirations are rising on one hand, and there are a whole bunch of global companies, right from Apple to Jockey, which companies which are tapping into the potential of India. If Indian companies were to really make that big leap, we need a very, very strong, compelling brand proposition. Usually, iconic companies are built on a singular theme. For example, Coke around happiness, 3M around innovation, Apple around simplicity, Ferrari around racing and passion, Harley-Davidson around brotherhood and heritage. And I'm very pleased to have actually today a whole bunch of people, panelists, who represent companies that are iconic in the Indian context. Mr. Hiranandani is creating communities. SBI stands for trust and reach. Mahindra stands for tough and rugged. Mr. Sodhi, Amul stands for the taste of India. Affordable third place, Cafe Coffee Day. And Britannia, of course, delights. So my first question to the panelists is, what is the fulcrum on which your iconic brand is really built? And give us some insights into what are the right ingredients to create an iconic brand. Mr. Goenka.
I think it's right to say that there has to be a fulcrum before any company can think of creating an iconic brand. But let me say that one cannot set out to create an iconic brand. It happens as a result of many actions that happen over the years that makes a brand iconic brand. Even if you are among the top 20, 30 brands, that doesn't necessarily mean an iconic brand. So I'll just differentiate in a big brand versus an iconic brand. Now, for an iconic brand, you talked about fulcrum, and I do believe that there is a fulcrum that's required. What is the what does the brand stand on? What is the primary deliverable of the brand? And the brand must have the deliverable. Now you talk about Mahindra Group. So if I was to go back several years, I think Mahindra Group's fulcrum perhaps at that time was trust. Whatever products or services we were providing that maybe 15, 20 years ago, trust was something that that customers, consumers had in Mahindra brand. They knew that even if the product didn't perform, the company will stand behind it and will not left the customer high and dry. But as we moved forward, we kind of introspected and looked within ourselves to see what is it that the modern customer is going to be looking for, especially when we look at millennials. What will really excite them? And we find that there is a different kind of connect that you need to have with millennials than perhaps what was there in the previous generation. And after a lot of research, in fact, this work was done by an agency in New York. After a lot of research, we concluded there's something within Mahindra that we didn't even realize that we had, and something that connects very well with the consumers, with the millennials, and that is the whole philosophy of RISE. And that's how Mahindra RISE, that many of you would have seen attached to our name, came about. And Mahindra RISE is all about saying that whatever we do, whatever business we are in, whoever we interact with, all the stakeholders, whether employees, customers, communities around us, or dealers, suppliers, we will help everyone to rise. Okay? Rise in terms of income levels, rise in terms of quality of life, rise in terms of what you will do with things, all of that. So we have been for the last 5 years driving Mahindra brand to kind of prove to ourselves internally and prove to the world outside that Mahindra is all about making communities rise, making stakeholders rise, and that's what we've been doing for the last 5 years. And it's working, I would say, quite well for us. Mahindra is a very diverse business, and in some sense, rise is the only word that's connecting all our businesses, whether it is real estate, whether it is automotive, whether it is IT, whether it is infrastructure. Rise is the only word that connects everything. There's nothing else that is common amongst us.
Sure. Ms. Bhattacharya.
Well, first of all, I've been very lucky in the sense I inherited an iconic institution. So I really didn't have to go about creating that icon. It was already there. As you know, the bank has been now around for 211 long years. Since the Fortune 500 list came into being, it's been on it, and it has never fallen off. It's a bank that has actually, not only created and participated, but been around throughout the entire evolution of banking in the country. And you'll be maybe surprised to know that today our market share is more than what it was a decade ago. And we talk about a lot of competition and things like that, but even then, that's the actual state of affairs. So what exactly is it that we are doing in order to maintain the fact that this organization remains as an iconic one? And I think, what we are actually trying to do, as was just said by Mr. Goenka, is to see what is in it for the customer. So whatever you do, the customer needs to be at the center of it. He talked about all stakeholders, which is a wider concept. But for us, whatever we do, at the center of it, the customer is very important. And one thing that has to be understood is when you are dealing with money, money is something that is dear to people after their lives. Their lives are more dear to them. But I think if there is a second thing, if you ask anybody what is most dear to you, they'll say life and family, but immediately thereafter will be money. And so for money, you need to be able to have people trust you. So unless the trust is there, and that trust again will come only when they realize that their interest is at our heart. If their interest is not what I'm looking out for, there is no way in our business we can create and retain an iconic institution. And to ensure that, what we really need to do is what are the people looking for? What are they asking for? What is the convenience they are seeking? What is the particular issue that they are having? And then trying and resolving those so that you can address those very requirements. I think that is what ensures that we continue to remain iconic.
Mr. Hiranandani, your tag is creating communities. Is that how you started? Did you envisage it? Was it inspired? Did you just see a business opportunity and build on it?
Actually, I'm going to borrow from both of my preceding Mr. Pawan Goenka and Mr. Arundhati Bhattacharya. I think the first thing and only thing really we did was to have the trust of our consumers. And until we couldn't have this trust for the last 30 years, on a day-to-day, year-on-year, on a continuing basis, from project to project, you just cannot be in the position that we are today. The second part of it was the fact that we did what we were expected to do, but unfortunately, people in the industry did not do it. So we stabilized quality of buildings when it was reputed for builders not to stabilize quality. We tried to keep up commitments of delivery when other people would not do that. And of course, the value creation that we did was probably second to none as compared to any other industry completely. So for instance, somebody bought a flat in a building called Lake Castle in 1991 from us at 1,000 rupees a foot. And recently, a friend of ours approached us and said, we want to buy a resale flat in that building. And I happened to connect with that person because I remembered that owner. And when I asked them that, you know, here is a customer who wants to buy it at 30,000 rupees a foot, the person was hooed, hard, ha, hoo, ha, and finally said, you know, this sells for 33,000 rupees a foot. But, you know, since you have telephoned, I'm willing to sell it at 33,000 rupees a foot. That's the value creation that we have been able to do simply because even after 20 years plus, the value of the product that you have created is endurable or durable. Unfortunately, the industry didn't follow this norm. So I think I became, if you call me iconic, by default. Other people just didn't do what was needed to be done. We just did what we had to do. So I think if we just do what we have to do in the real estate business, and I don't have to work as hard as my predecessors in terms of whatever it is, I think we will be able to achieve iconic positions in the real estate industry. So it's quite easy to be a leader in the real estate industry as distinguished it. Of course, we have the negatives in terms of dealing with the government and polity and other things, which is probably the biggest negative as far as real estate. And we have to be in this position of delivery and other things in spite of all the negatives which we do face. But having said that, I think we enjoyed this position because of trust and a commitment which we haven't forgotten yet.
Mr. Sodhi, obviously your industry is not as easy. You're in a hyper-competitive industry, and you are a cooperative, which makes it doubly tougher. So how do you maintain Amul as an iconic brand?
Thank you. Coming to the food sector now after. Well, you see, making iconic brand around milk, I can talk about Amul, last 70 years, how this brand has been built. If I have to describe in one word, it is consistency. Consistency in values, consistency in business objective, consistency in products, consistency in communication, consistency in HR policies. You see, founders who have formed this organization 70 years back, whatever value systems they imbibe, we try to see that we not only show them in the presentation, it is demonstrated and in action. Same is in the business philosophy when this Amul was founded. Simple, value for many, value for money. Value for many for 3.6 million farmers who are the owners, so they get stable and remunerative price for their produce. And value for money for millions of consumers, they get best product at most reasonable price. Consistency in products, what butter we manufactured 50 years back, same product. No changing any expensive ingredients with cheap synthetic ingredients, or if cost of production increasing, adding more sugar, or reducing the size of pack from 1 liter to 950 or 900, no. Dr. Coreen has told us one thing is that always think consumer is smarter than you. Then you take any decision. And we do not work to win loyalties of the consumer. Loyalty can be changed. Today I am more loyal to one airlines. Tomorrow the other fellow is giving slightly cheaper ticket. I'll change my loyalty. Same is true for hotels. What we work for making our brand is not for loyalty, but we want faith. Not only faith, blind faith. What we have got in a religion. Once you get blind faith in your brand, then consumer will not look right, left. He'll go and pick up your product. Like we don't look left and right once we follow any religion. And that blind faith don't come over time by spending millions and billions on advertising. Blind faith comes over a period of time and it is passed over to a generation. So once you have got a blind faith consumer, and same is in case of consistent HR or professional that we apply. I mean, most of the people working in Amul are on their first job. I'm there for 35 years, number two, everybody is 25, 30 years. So in the end, I think what we feel is, if you want to make your brand iconic, you cannot make brand iconic with the deep pockets. You can only make brand iconic when all the stakeholders are happy and in win-win position, whether suppliers, consumers, or the employees.
Sure. Siddhartha. So yeah, what is the fulcrum around which you have built Cafe Coffee Day? I know it is affordable luxury.
See, first of all, I don't think we are one of the iconic brands here. I've got a great respect for Amul and Mr. Korean. And I know how the Britannia is built and how the State Bank is built. And I've got a great respect for Mahindras and Hiranandanis. See, but one thing...
But you are the largest coffee chain. You have a huge lead. And it is a brand that has huge recall. Of course, Starbucks is big competition for you, but you are not in a bad position at all.
See, we sell 180 million cups of coffee and tea every year. I tell my team that we sell only 1 cup of coffee or tea in a year to every Indian. That means 364 days we don't work. So for me, I think it is the beginning. I'm a startup today. If you ask me next 10 to 15 years, we have got an aspiration to build this brand where every Indian will be proud of.
Sure.
So like Madam Arundhati was telling, it is the customer satisfaction and the customer service. So we can have all the big dreams, we can have all the aspirations, but if our customer satisfaction is not good, we can't build a great brand. So if you ask me how good we are only 65% to the perfection. I had to improve another 35% in next span.
That's being extraordinarily modest, Mr.
No,
Berry.
not true. That's a fact. Because I can tell you, you mentioned one of my international competition. You know, that company was only $200 million market cap with $60 million revenue in '92. And today is $85 billion, bigger than any Indian corporate there. So can a coffee company build like that? So there are the great aspiration brand. I would talk to Mr. Suresh also. Nestle, I've got a great respect for Nestle and Cadbury's. I think our aspiration is that can we build a great brand from India? And tell you honestly, my team and myself are really committed to build that in a span of 10 to 15 years.
Is there a one theme, one philosophy that drives you and your entire team? Is there one thought? So what is the one thing that to tell all your employees?
See, one thing I can tell them that selling coffee and tea is not a rocket science. It is very simple. Anybody can do it. Do it perfectly so that it is easy to win the game.
Sure. Mr. Berry.
Yeah, so just a difference basically on this side versus your other side. We are in the food business where we've got millions of interactions with the consumers every day. So we sell 25, 30 million packets every day. There are lots of interactions. So it's easier for us to build brands than it is from the other side, because what is a brand? A brand is a deep relationship that you have with your consumer, with your target audience. And that's built with multiple interactions and sustained interactions over a period of time. And I think we have the opportunity to do that. One will buy a house once in 20 years, right? Minister was saying that, we want everyone to buy one house, but that's going to be one house in one lifetime. Here there are multiple interactions, so our opportunities are large. Our thinking as we build the brand is all about authenticity and honesty, right? I think the two factors that really help you build brands over a period, as you have to be authentic, you have to be honest. If you're not, then the relationship breaks. It's like any other relationship, right? It's the relationship that you have with a friend, with your wife, with your children. If you're not authentic, if you're not honest, there'll be suspicion and it's not going to go forward. The other thing is that it's all about the senses. When you're talking about food, it's all about the various senses that you have in the body. So it's very important to make sure that, from the time you see the product to the time you digest it, every sense, the body feels, you feel really good about what you're consuming. So it's while you have interactions, the number of occasions that the consumer has to reject you are also very high. So from that standpoint, I think it's very important to think about all those as you move forward. And I think because it's all about relationships, it's all about the relationship with your consumer. I think as Indian companies, we have a better understanding. Obviously, there are lots of other companies which are international and have been in the country for a very long time, and they've developed this relationship. They've developed on the ground understanding of consumers. But versus a new company coming from outside, I think Indian companies will always have a better chance of success. Then why is it that we see a lot more international companies than we see Indian companies as iconic brands? The reason really is that as Indian companies, we sometimes do not go all the way, right? We don't make state-of-the-art R&D centers. We are not steadfast on quality. We don't say that we have to have the best quality, right? There's some companies that do it, and Mr. Sodhi was talking about it, Siddhartha was talking about it, and all of my co-panelists were talking about it. But the companies that do it, make it. But companies that are not able to do it. So I think I would urge all Indian companies to make sure that we remain authentic and honest. Number two, we spend money on the brand. It doesn't need deep pockets. I completely agree with Mr. Sodhi. It doesn't need deep pockets. It needs understanding of the consumer and a deep understanding of the consumer, but spend behind the brand. Make sure that you spend on R&D and technology, and make sure that you provide the best technology, best quality possible for every pack that you sell.
Is that really possible, Dr. Goenka? I'm just wondering, because unless you have the resources, you are an automobile maker. I don't think it's easy to make an impeccable car if you don't have the kind of investments that you would require to make it as good as some of the international brands.
As good as? Which one?
For example, Toyota.
Okay. All right. Anybody from Toyota here? No, then I can talk freely. Okay. Okay, so your question is that how does an Indian company do that?
Which is
okay, so I think it's a very insightful question. Generally, there is a perception that Indian companies are not doing enough for technology and enough for R&D. And perception is not totally unfounded. Not totally unfounded, I'm saying. But if you were to look back, say 20 years ago, for the Indian companies in the automotive industry and look at the companies today, the companies that are still surviving and doing well are the companies who invested in technology and R&D 20 years ago. So there was no way in this industry, in the automotive industry, you can remain competitive, given that our borders are open, given that we do not have any sort of barriers for others to come in, and that's the way it should be. If that had remained, the Indian companies still would be in the old era of doing nothing and just having a waiting list and selling their cars. Because there was competition, those who realized that they have to invest, they are investing. If I was to look at Mahindra and just give you some data, our total expenditure on R&D is 4% of revenue. Now, most people will not think of that. Most people will think that we are spending less than 1%.
Right.
But we are investing 4% of revenue, which is same as Toyota, maybe even a little higher in terms of percent of the revenue. The difficulty that we have is that we don't have scale of Toyota. So our 4% revenue is much smaller absolute amount than 4% revenue for Toyota. But more than money, the difficult problem for Indian OEMs who are doing most of their R&D technology work in India is availability of talent. That is the more difficult part than saying that I want to spend money. And therefore, many companies are going overseas, many companies are doing M&As, acquiring companies outside to get technology. Mahindra has acquired a company in Korea, Tata has acquired a company, obviously, well-known company in UK, and everybody is doing that to acquire technology. But it's very clear to every company that unless you match up with your peers from overseas in terms of technology, in terms of quality, in terms of consistent quality, in terms of delivery of performance, you cannot survive because no consumer is going to buy a product from an Indian company, no matter which field you are in, because it is an Indian company. That cannot be the sole reason for buying. It will have to be a value which is equal to, or maybe even better than, value coming from MNCs.
Sure. Mr. Hiranandani, have you ever felt, you've taken this positioning of being a premium builder, right? And your houses are about 30-40% higher than the neighborhood. Have you ever felt that this limits your growth opportunity to stick to that positioning?
No, I don't think, we don't, we really, I was brought up when I was small at Malabar Hill. So my benchmark of starting life was whatever was constructed in Malabar Hill, and the quality of life that I had in Malabar Hill should be in Powai plus. So the garden of hanging garden, I should build Powai gardens much better. I should build a school which is better than Campion, which is the school I attended, and so on and so forth. So basically the benchmark of what you really put for yourself is really the criteria. Whether you pick up technology from India, within your own company, external materials which are available worldwide or otherwise, I think with the openness of the economy, that's not really the issue. The issue is, I think people don't want to commit themselves to do something which is better. So if today you ask me what is the competition to Hiranandani, it's not Toyota, but it's Hiranandani himself, because you really want to better yourself in your next project or product.
You're blessed, you have only yourself as competition.
Yes, I do feel
Unlike
that, because we don't find any single company in the country which is better than us in the total range of activity that we have. So what we try to do is, we will copy Mr. Raheja in this particular activity, we would copy Mr. Loda in something else, and we would pick up technology from Singapore or Japan or any other country in the world and do all of it. So in reality, we don't see any one single company to be competitive to us in that sense of the term. So for instance, townships. We had no examples of good townships in India for 15 years. When we started, it was only 15 years after we did townships that we found that there were examples of good townships in India. So we do all that type of. So really, if you ask me, what is it can I better in each and every segment of my business? I don't see one single example in India to do the entire gamut of it. So we have to constantly work on every aspect of it. I wish I had somebody ready-made I could copy off in a sector and say, oh, I want to take technology from a company in America or Japan or Dubai or Hong Kong or Singapore. I think that would be the easiest thing for me to do. I would love to do it. Unfortunately, there is nothing like that available. So we are stuck with, learning ourselves, putting ourselves into the position and keep on improving whatever we can do for the next project. Just to the point of what Mr. Piyush Goyal mentioned about affordable housing, it is my belief that the Prime Minister's mission on this is going to cause the next disruption in the real estate business. So similar to what Indigo did in the airlines business of doing low-cost airlines, and there will be companies in India which may not be the same companies which do quality products and do that kind of construction. In the next 10 years, there will be new leaders, or maybe some of us leaders will try to adopt new technology in that segment to really succeed, because my belief is that the growth in that sector is going to be 100 times faster than the sector that we enjoy. Similar to what happened to low-cost airlines in the airline space, real estate is going to take that paradigm, and I think we have to look forward to something like that. So it'll be quite a lot of fun to see the next 10 years who will take the leadership in that segment.
I want to know who's going to take the leadership in cutting real estate prices.
Sorry?
Who's going to take the lead in cutting real estate prices? Everybody here wants to know.
I think 5 years from today, you see, unfortunately, the government is actually not working for itself. If you look at the ready reckoner rate in Maharashtra, every year they increase by 10 to 15% to collect more taxes. If I sell a flat at a lower than the ready reckoner price, I'm penalized by the income tax department for having sold it at a lower price, because that difference is treated as unaccounted money, or they tax me extra on that. I can't reduce the price of the thing for the purposes of stamp duty. The additional FSI that they have increased in Mumbai has gone up tremendously, that the lowest cost of price with additional FSI will be 10,000 plus, even in place like Borivali or Mulund at the end of Mumbai. So we can only hope for these price falls to come in the peripheral areas, where luckily now infrastructure is coming. So outside Mumbai region, you will see price falls which will be substantial, and the volume of work which will go will be substantially higher. So growth in this arena will, I think, be at least 40 to 50% growth per annum compoundedly, but it will be more in the affordable housing space than the space that we enjoy today.
Ms. Bhattacharya, SBI's trust, the trust in SBI, of course, is absolutely unshakable. When you know that there is government behind SBI, behind LIC, it's a position that no other private sector company can ever challenge, right? So, but a whole bunch of public sector companies have really crumbled because they were not able to up the service quality. So you might have one great thing going for you, but unless the other things are, up there as well as a company, sometime it's going to come to haunt you. So on your side, during your period, tell us two things that you have initiated which builds SBI to last, and two suggestions that you would make to the government to ensure that SBI as an institution really thrives.
Two things that we have done. You are quite right when you say that, you can't just inherit an iconic institution and hope it lasts like that forever. You have to be on your toes all the time. And I think two of the things that we really have done differently in SBI in the last few years, one is, of course, going digital. So we have really and truly brought about a lot of changes. And going digital is very different from merely, what we did in computerization about a decade back. Computerization was basically taking the manual way of doing things and then ensuring that the system does the same. Today, when we are going digital, that is not the case anymore. So today, when you go digital, you start from the customer. As I said, you have to keep the customer at the center. And therefore, you do what are called the customer journeys. So you take up the various things that a customer needs to do. And then you find out digital solutions for the same. So we've been working quite consistently in the last 3 years. In fact, we've been working very, very hard. And some of the products are already there, but many more are to come. And then this year, this 17-18 will be the year when many of these will come up. And we do believe that already the market sees us as a leader in digital. In fact, we got some of the awards of Gartner in the entire Asia-Pac region for Cool Innovation Awards. So we do a lot of innovation and a lot of hackathons, etc., within the organization in order to get the right kind of products out there. And the other thing that we have done, and this is also important because we are a bank, is in the area of risk. Risk actually, where we were concerned, it was more of a static kind of a thing. So you had to tick boxes, and if the sufficient number of boxes were checked, then your risk was supposed to be okay, which obviously is not the case. Risk is something that is much more dynamic, and it is something where everybody is involved. It's not only the risk managers. So if I have a person who's sitting at a counter and opening an account, he should know that if he goes wrong, that account will be used in order to defraud the bank in a very big way. So he has to have a lot of understanding of what he's doing. So risk as something that is more dynamic and risk as something that is understood from the front line right up to the senior levels. So that is again something that we have really incorporated. We have done a lot of work, brought in a lot of technology tools, lots of stuff that we have done there. And two things, if I were to tell the government, one of course, and you know, I was just joking with Mr. Vaidyanathan, one very easy solution to all of it is to ensure that the government holding comes down to 49%. I think that's one solution that sort of takes care of a lot of things. But if I am more serious, I think the two things that the government really needs to look for in this area of banking and finance, one of course is in the area of cybersecurity. Because you know, you are as good as the weakest link in the chain. We are today in a very interconnected world. And therefore, you know, if there is even one piece that is not secure and not strong, then the whole system can get compromised. So that is one area where you really and truly need to look at. And if I'm talking about the other thing, I think, you know, you need to look at the area of human resources. Sure. Today, you know, if anybody is to do anything and be something, the skill levels are very important, especially because the world is such an evolving world. And therefore, you know, a lot of work needs to go on ensuring that we build the right skills in the country.
Just one concluding thought on what was your one-line mantra for building an iconic company?
After you, sir.
Acha. I think, like I started, one line I can only say is that if you want to build brands, don't look into quarterly figures.
I completely agree with Mr. Sodhi because we get these questions very often. If you want to build a brand, it is a game to play for 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, no, I will go back to what I said earlier. It's all about authenticity and honesty. If you're absolutely authentic about what you're doing and you're doing it honestly, I think you'll be able to build an iconic brand.
Same question. I would actually agree with authenticity and honesty because consumer today will not be fooled by a product or a brand for too long. And if you are not authentic about what your value proposition, then the brand can never become iconic. So that's the most important thing.
I would say that, you know, you have to give attention to the entire product. So even if your product is great, your packaging is bad, it's not going to work. So, you know, it has to be from micro to macro. All of that needs attention.
I would have copied most of them, but just to add on to a different point is, I think change management. I think the world with Brexit and Trump and then demonetization put together in 1 year, if you're going to get shocked like this every day, then I think what you really need to be good is at change management and to be able to handle situations which tends to get overboard every day.
Sure. On that note, thank you so much. Thanks, panelists.